svuota frigo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I learned that. That's an Italian word that I learned from a friend of mine who was from Italy, svuota frigo. And she says it literally means refrigerator emptier. The idea being that you go in your refrigerator and figure out how you're going to use up some of those leftovers. You wrap them in pastry dough or pasta dough and repurpose them into something, a new dish. That's what I want to make today, something called agnolotti, which I had never heard of, but I saw this recipe in a restaurant trade journal, a recipe that was created by a chef. I had to look it up in my pasta encyclopedia to see what agnolotti is. It's very similar to ravioli. It's a stuffed pasta, but rather than using 2 sheets of pasta dough like you use when you're making ravioli, you use 1 sheet, put your filling down, fold the pasta over, and then you trim it. So it's got 1 folded side. According to her, you can make them rectangular, you can make them square, you can make them small, you can make them large. She says it comes from the Piedmont region of Italy, but they're made throughout Italy now, and their traditional size and shape varies from region to region. I'm going to fill mine with a mixture of chicken and cheese, and then I'm going to make a spaghetti sauce, a tomato sauce to go over the top, a really simple, fresh sauce. So let's make agnolotti. I need to prep my tomatoes by peeling and seeding them, so I'm cutting an X into the bottom of each one. I'll show you that in a moment, what I'm doing. I've got some water here boiling on the stove, and I'm just going to submerge my tomatoes in there for about 30 seconds to loosen that skin and make them easier to peel. So my tomatoes now are ready to peel. Oftentimes you'll see the skin split on them. And that's a good indication that they'll peel very easily, which they are. A traditional sauce for this agnolotti is actually chicken stock or beef stock that's been concentrated. But more people now are serving agnolotti with a tomato sauce, and I like that idea. And I wanted to make it with fresh tomatoes. I have, by the way, here about 2 pounds, which is roughly 900 grams of fresh Roma tomatoes. All right, and then what I want to do is cut it in half. I have here a bowl for the seeds. I'll show you why in a moment. You saw me putting the seeds in a strainer. I want to save that juice. I've known this for years, but I haven't seen this until fairly recently in recipes, that the juice has a lot of flavor in it. So you get it into a sieve and then use a spatula to push it through the strainer. The seeds can go in the trash, but you do want to save that delicious juice. Got a lot of flavor in it. I put my tomatoes in my food processor. I'm going to add 4 or 5 fresh basil leaves in there. I bought some basil yesterday, 3 or 4 cloves of whole garlic. And then this is the juice from seeding the tomatoes. And then, as I always do, less of a mess to clean up. I put a plastic barrier in there so I don't have to wash the top. Lock that into place. And I'm going to pulse this. I'm going to grind this down a little bit because I'm not going to be cooking this for 3 to 4 hours that you would typically do with some spaghetti sauces, some marinaras. I'm going to just lightly cook this because I think the flavor of a fresh sauce would taste better with the chicken. Okay, I did that. Open this up. See, nice and clean. Take my plastic off, and then let me get the blade out. And here's my sauce before it's cooked, but there's my raw tomato sauce. I'll cook that down when I'm ready to use it to sauce my agnolotti. I wanted to mention a couple things about my tomato sauce. First of all, I'm using fresh tomatoes, but you can use canned tomatoes if you want. These will work fine. And then you'll notice I didn't put any onion in this, even though I have onion. I'm going to cook this so little that there isn't enough time to cook out that raw onion flavor. So I decided not to put any onion in this. I don't like that raw onion flavor in my sauces. Now, here's the tricky part. It's hard for me to guess what I'm really going to need. Will I have enough filling or too much filling? Have I made enough pasta dough or too much? Do I have more sauce than I need or not enough? It kind of all depends upon how many people you think you're going to be feeding and how much leftovers you have in the refrigerator. This is more like organic cooking. So I'm going to make what I've got, and if I have leftovers, well, I'll use it maybe for something else. I'm not going to be making a lot because I'm doing this more to test the recipe and to do a demonstration. So what I have here is 3 ounces of cooked chicken meat. This is mixed light meat and dark meat. That's about 85 grams. And I'm going to chop this up pretty fine. So there is the meat chopped up pretty fine. I could have done that in the food processor, but I try to do things a variety of different ways so that people can see there's more than one way of doing something. If you don't have a food processor, chop it well with a knife. I have a couple of really small sage leaves here that I'm going to mince these up really fine. I think fresh sage would be good in this filling, but not a lot, just a little bit. To the chicken now I'm going to add some cheese. I have here a 1/4 cup, which is about 30 grams of well chopped Romano. No, this is mozzarella. This is mozzarella. And this is Romano. Again, 1/4 cup. This is 20 grams. You can use Parmesan if you want. I like Romano. I'm going to break an egg in there. And then mix this up and see how wet it is. If it's too wet, I have some breadcrumbs ready. See, that's a little bit too wet, I think. So I'm going to start putting some breadcrumb in there. This is panko breadcrumb. And I'm just going to mix this in. It's going to absorb moisture until I have a dry enough mixture that it looks like it belongs as a filling in a stuffed pasta. How much to use depends upon how big your egg is, how much other ingredients you're using. Again, it's kind of hard to give proportions for something like this. I remember my grandmother one time teaching my mother to cook. She added something and my mother asked her, "How much did you add?" She said, "You just add enough." My mom said, "Well, what do you mean enough? How much is enough?" My grandmother got angry. "What do you mean? Enough is enough." That's how she cooked. Okay, see, I like that. That's, I think, a nice feeling. I'm going to get my fingers in there. Yes, see, that's nice. It's starting to hold a shape really nice. I'm going to go with that. That'll continue to get drier as those breadcrumbs absorb more moisture. The last step is to season my filling. I'm going to put a little pinch of salt in there and some freshly ground black pepper, not a whole lot. And then get that mixed in. See, already that's starting to feel stiff because of the panko absorbing moisture. Whoops. But that should be fine. Okay, I'm ready to start working with my pasta dough. I have here some homemade pasta dough. I made this morning, put it in the refrigerator, let it sit in there maybe 2 or 3 hours. Then about an hour ago, I took it out, let it come up to room temperature. As far as what's in this, 2 whole eggs, 1/2 cup, 80 grams pasta flour, 1/2 cup, 70 grams all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon salt, roughly 2 teaspoons of extra virgin olive oil, and then I kept adding more flour to it as I was kneading it until I got it to the texture that I wanted. I have on YouTube and my website a recipe procedure for making pasta from scratch. Look in my website, in the recipe archive, in the basics section, you'll see pasta from scratch. Okay, I'm not going to work with this as one big piece, it'll be too much. So I'm going to work with it in smaller pieces, maybe 1/3 at a time. And as I work with this, I'll probably need to add more flour. So I have a little flour duster here. Not a lot, just to keep it from sticking. Now I'm ready to start rolling my pasta through my pasta machine. With the wheels here, the roller is the furthest apart. It's #1 setting on this machine. And I'm going to roll to probably #5, maybe #6. I want to get this pretty thin. And then if I need to, I can fold over the ends like so. Go back to #1. And what that does is it allows me to widen the dough. So I want to get it as wide as possible too. So this is again a smaller piece of my dough, about 1/3. I'm going to use a double roller that I have here to widen this out a little bit. Works pretty well. I bought this on Amazon, by the way. I don't know what it's called, pizza dough roller or something. Lets me roll it a little bit wider so I can get some width this way. So I have my filling now here. Check out a spoon. Gonna put little pillows of filling. How I want to do this, I think toward the center. And let's see how that works out. This is the first time I've made agnolotti, so I'm learning as I go along. Now I've made an egg wash here with a little bit of egg white and some water. Just going to wet one side of this so that it'll stick. And then stir my sauce. You can hear it boiling away over there. I'm just going to roll this over and then press it down, squeezing air out as I go along. I have a fluted cutter here, so I'm going to trim down fairly close to my stuffed pasta here. Separate that off. And then trimming in between. And that is an agnolotti. Let me do a close-up of that. So there is an agnolotti. Serrated edges on 3 sides, but folded on the 4th side. And that's kind of a rectangular shaped agnolotti. As I said, size and shape varies from region to region in Italy. Pretty neat, isn't it? So there they are. I got nearly 40 of them out of that filling. I had just a small piece of pasta left over. I can cut this up and freeze it, use that for soups. I got some water heating on the stove. So these will cook in 1 to 2 minutes in boiling water. Okay. I cooked up just a few here, just enough for one simple plate so I can see what they look like and see what they taste like. And then here's some of my sauce. I cooked this sauce for like no more than 20 minutes. And I tasted it. It's got a nice, fresh flavor to it. You can see by the color that it's not been cooked very long. Beautiful. Dress that up with maybe a little bit of basil chiffonade. And then I like to put something like this, just a few drops of extra virgin olive oil on top. Not much, just enough for a little bit of flavor. And there it is, agnolotti stuffed with chicken. My first time making agnolotti. And I think it came out pretty decent. Of course, I'll know when I taste it. See, I wouldn't put any cheese on this because you can taste the cheese in the filling. And it has that nice fresh tomato flavor. That is very good. Oh, that is really good. Okay, so excuse me. I'm going to go enjoy my agnolotti. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.